Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps. And my guest on the show today is Miss Sarah Dawkins. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Cal. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So, Sarah, me and you got connected through LinkedIn, and I took a look at the work you do. I know you're a holistic coach, and an author, and a keynote speaker, and it looks like you're very passionate about helping others heal themselves in more natural or holistic ways. And I thought that was something that's very interesting. And I think personally, I've seen over the last, I think, 5 years that there's been a rise in a more holistic approach when looking at health, which I thought is very interesting compared to before, where it's like you get a note from the doctor, that's what it is, and that's all. There's nothing you can do about it. I really love the work you do. I think anything that can help people heal is something I definitely support. But before we get into everything, Sarah, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you. My name's Sarah Dawkins. I was a registered nurse for 20 years, and I love my job helping people. But I started to feel that actually I'm not really helping them to help themselves. We're just cutting bits out or putting bits in or giving them medications. And it's like, it's got to be more deeper stuff that we can be doing for these people. And then I started looking at the root cause analysis. What's causing their problems? Why are they manifesting these symptoms in the first place? What can we do? And it was through my own self-healing of a suicidal depression that I realized actually we can naturally self-heal. And that's how my book started. And then I thought, well, I want to help more people to do this, not just with depression, but with whatever I can. And so my book developed from there, and I reached out to other people, and then I started coaching other people. So it kind of spread from me healing myself to me helping others to heal their self holistically, looking at why the symptoms have manifested, and what the people can do for themselves to help themselves to heal themselves. Because as a healer, we don't actually heal people. We help them awaken the part of them that to remember that they are a healer themselves.
Yeah, that's I really like how you describe that. It's helping them to rediscover the part that can help them heal themselves. And you're just there to kind of serve as, the guides and the coach, to identify maybe what areas we should be looking at. But I wanted to start from the beginning, Sarah, because you said something which I think is quite rare, that you self-healed yourself through depression and suicidal thoughts. And from my experience, at least from the people I've spoken to who have gone through something like that, it was always accompanied with therapy, with medication. I'm not saying that you didn't do that, but it's interesting that sounds like you were able to do it without that. So could you tell us just the story behind that, I guess, that phase of your life, and how did you actually begin to start healing yourself?
Okay, so something happened back in 2010, and it sent me into a massive downward spiral. And I went to the doctors, and he went, "Oh, you're clinically depressed, and here's some tablets." So I said, "Oh, I did this after my son with a postnatal depression. It didn't really do anything. I felt like really just groggy all the time. I don't want to go that route again." And he's like, "Well, that's the only treatment for depression." I went, "Well, it's not what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do." And I really didn't, but I'm not going to do the pharmaceuticals. And I went away, and I'm like, just in this big black vacuous hole. I had no idea what I was going to do. We had dogs, so I had to go out walking every day with the dogs. And I just did it in autopilot, kept my head down, didn't look at anybody, walked the dogs. And slowly but surely, I started coming out of myself, and started looking around whilst I was walking the dogs. And I remember it was springtime, and the trees were in leaf, and there was buds, and there was some flowers opening up. The sky was blue, and I'm thinking, oh, I didn't really notice any of this before. It was just so dark. And looking back now, I realized I was being mindful, but I had no idea what it was called at the time, like 12 years ago. Um, um, so I started coming out of myself in noticing all these. And as I started seeing it more and more, I then started practicing gratitude. Oh, it's so wonderful that the sky's blue and the sun's shining, and oh, thank you. Again, at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know it was called gratitude. I was just like, well, I'm pleased that I'm awake for another day. I'm still alive. I've had a good cup of coffee. Somebody's actually messaged me. My family love me. So I began to appreciate a lot more. And again, I was starting to come out of this big black void that I'd been in. So I started then looking at what else I could do for myself, because I was able to think more clearly then. And I looked on YouTube for guided meditations, because I tried to sit and meditate, but I just had this negative voice on my shoulder going, you're worthless, and why are you here? And awful. So I just went onto YouTube to try and find something to make me feel a bit happier. And by listening to a guided meditation, of course, you can't listen to this negative Nelly on your shoulder, because you're listening to the person doing the guided meditation, you're making the pictures. So I found that really helpful. And initially I was just looking, just help me find some peace, help me just to be happy. And as I healed further down the line, I started thinking, well, I need to do something more with my life. I'm not happy at work because I'd got myself into a right rut. So I started looking at what can I do? So I started doing guided meditations about being a professional entrepreneur and winning awards and doing something out of my comfort zone, finding the courage to do these things. And I did actually leave work and set up my own business. And slowly but surely, every day was like a little bit better, a little bit better. But I didn't notice it until it was in leaps and bounds, a few months down the line, like, wow, I haven't cried for days. And, the sun's still shining. And I started feeling a lot better. And I realized that I was no longer suicidal and the depression was lifting. So I set up my own business and started pushing myself out to do networking meetings, which was way out of my comfort zone because I just shrank down to nothing. And I thought, I've got to push my boundaries. I've really just got to keep pushing my boundaries and stepping out of this comfort zone. And I did so many different networking events and really pushed myself. And it felt so uncomfortable and so alien. But I thought, I've got to do it, because otherwise I'm just going to stay stuck in this rut. And slowly but surely, I did more guided meditations on being successful in my own business. And I won 2 awards, one locally, one nationally in the UK, and became a successful entrepreneur. But it was a really slow process. When I look back, it was just seeing some days being so consciously aware that actually days aren't so dark, and I don't want to take my own life. And I am speaking to people now. So we can do it. And as I say, when I started my journey, I had no idea what I was doing. But looking back now, I see exactly what I did and how I did it. And that's how I help others, because it's a slow journey. Healing is a slow journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. And we have to accept that we're on this journey for a while. And as long as we can see the small gains as time goes by, it keeps propelling us forwards.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a beautiful story, and congratulations on being able to get out of that dark place.
Thank you.
I know people who have gone through something like that, and sometimes they never get out. So to see someone who managed to do it and push themselves, congrats, because I know how hard that is.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, and this just came to my mind. Do you think we ever truly heal?
I think our body is always healing every day. So, if you define healing at a micro level, our body is always healing. We cut ourselves, it heals. We bruise ourselves, it heals. It's always repairing our tissues all the time. So we're always healing. But at a macro level, the bigger things, yes, we can heal. I've healed the depression, I've healed the candida, I've healed the acid reflux, I've healed the joint pains. So we can absolutely heal, but we need to look at healing as a big picture. It's not just about eating more kale and drinking more water. We have to look at dealing with the mindset around healing. But yes, we can heal, and our body is always healing. We just have to support it.
I really like what you said there, that we have to support it. So okay, let's start tackling this from in a holistic way. So when you talk about a holistic approach or healing in a holistic way, I guess number one, what does that mean? How would you describe that to someone like me or to a potential client or so on? And I guess the next question I had is, where do you start?
So we need to heal not just on a physical level, but also on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And
Okay.
spirituality isn't about being religious, it's just about a connection to ourselves, whether you want to say my inner wisdom or my higher self or the divine or the universe or the energy, whatever you want to call it, we need that connection. So healing on the physical is what everybody thinks about. Eat healthier, have a better lifestyle, take a bit of exercise, stay hydrated, get a good night's sleep. That's the physical healing. On an emotional level, we need to deal with some of the shit from our past, basically. Things have happened, it's been out of our control. We need to look at it's in the past. We need to find a way to close the door. So sometimes we need to go back and look at what happened and why it happened, and what skills we were missing. Who needs forgiving? People hurt people hurt people. So the people that have hurt us, we need to find a way to understand that they will possibly hurt as well. We are the sum total of our life experiences, and we have no idea what other people's lives have entailed. So if we can forgive the past and let it go, it's not about forgiving people face to face, but it's for us. If we don't forgive it, we're carrying that weight around with us for the rest of our lives, and it will spill out in our emotions and color our lives. So if we can find a way to forgive that and let it go, but also forgive ourselves for anything that we need to be forgiven for, so that we can let it go in the past. The mental, it's about thinking about our mental health. What can we do to improve our mental health? Get outside, read some books, do some meditations, practice gratitude. And as I say, the spiritual is about that connection, whether it's ourselves or the divine or spirituality, or but we need a connection to something, a higher evolved something. So we look at all of that. On a macro level, that's like 4 areas. And then we look at on a micro level, what can we physically do to address all of those different areas? And things like journaling really helps. And when I say meditation, it's not about just sitting maybe quiet with your own thoughts or listening to a YouTube video to meditate. We can meditate whilst we're out walking, do a walking meditation, just be in that moment, using all our senses, be very mindful, become aware of our breathing. So we don't, you don't have, because a lot of people can't just sit still and meditate. So it's about raising that awareness of mindfulness. And just be aware of our thoughts as well, because we're not our thoughts. Quite often our thoughts or random thoughts can come into our head and you're like, where's that come from? So just be aware that we've got the option of choice. We've always got the option of choice, so we can choose. I'm just going to let that go because I don't know where that's come from, and I'm not that thought. And I choose to see the outside world, or see my partner, or see this good cup of coffee, and bring our focus into a more narrowed area. So there's a lot we can do to help ourselves. And relationships as well play a key part. Relationships with family and with friends, but also relationships with things, as in stuff, and food, because we can have good relationships with people, but we can have really bad relationships with stuff and just always need to be buying more and more and more. And the same with food. We can have bad relationships with food where we can binge or starve, or this food's good and this food's bad. And so we need to look at our relationships with not just people, but with other things as well. So there's a lot we can do. And we can start in any area. It doesn't matter, just as long as we start.
I really like the way you described the four areas, I think it provides a lot of clarity to how to look at it. How to look at the big picture and how to go from the macro to the micro. It sounds like we start in the macro, and then the micro is the actionable things we can start doing to start addressing some of those things in the bigger picture. Um, One thing that I was thinking about, because I was curious, you've been a registered nurse for 20 years, so I can assume you've seen, hundreds, if not thousands, of different kinds of cases and so on. So I was thinking, I'm like, now where Sarah is now, with the knowledge she has now, and as a coach and understanding this holistic approach and having had success in this way, do you ever look back at maybe your career and there are moments that now you would have maybe a different answer or a different cure to something maybe someone else had if they had something chronic or so on? Do you ever look back and reflect that maybe things, not if you had this knowledge now, things might have been different before?
For myself,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because I was brought up, my mum was a nurse. So I was brought up in that whole medical model. If you're sick, you go to the doctor, you get a pill or an antibiotic, and it makes you better. And that was the mindset I was brought up in, and that was what I believed in. So when I was actually working in America in 2005, somebody just like whispered something into my ear, just have a think about that and go home and do some research. And that's how I started looking. Okay, so there are other ways we can heal in different ways. We can use different modalities, homeopathy, naturopathy, food as medicine. So yeah, I think I would have done a lot different in my younger years had I have got the knowledge that I have now. But obviously I can't go back and change that. All I can do is work with what I've got now.
No, of course, 100%. I just thought it would be interesting when you reflect back, because I can say for myself, when I look back over the last, even not too long ago, and I'll be like, oh, how did I think like that? How did I do that? How was I not aware of all these things? So I was curious to see if you had a similar experience.
Yeah.
One thing that has come up, you've said consistently, and I think that's something so important and something that I guess for me was a big, game changer is awareness. And what you said, that we are not our thoughts. So I remember it was a couple of years ago. I think I was watching a podcast or something, and they were talking. I was reading a book, and they were talking about how your thoughts come in and they go, and sometimes we attach ourselves to a certain thought, but that might not be true, but that will influence our emotions and so on. So I think awareness is something that I think it's something that you never stop improving, because I think you're always going to have blind spots. And once you cover that one, down the line, another one's going to come up and you're going to have to, okay, be more aware of that. I think it's a never ending process. But from your perspective, I guess, why would you say that awareness is so, so important for us to just even get started in this whole process?
I think because we've been conditioned to, when you're ill, you go to the doctor, you expect to get a prescription. So I think raising awareness of that to start off, how ill do I feel? What are my symptoms? And what can I do to help myself? If quite often we say, a fever or just a general malaise. I don't need to go to the doctors with that of healing, because it makes us hot to kill any pathogens, any bugs within us. And we're conditioned to take a fever reducing medication, whether that's paracetamol or ibuprofen, Advil. And what we're doing is we're reducing the ability of our body to heal us. So if we raise awareness about why do we get a fever, and how can we work with it? Because Eastern medicine for rigors, when you shake and shiver but you're red hot, will wrap that person up to stop the shaking, to make them hotter, to kill the pathogen or the bug within them. But in Western medicine, we give out fever reducing medication which works against the body. So it's about learning what can we do to help ourselves. There's a lot that we can do at home that will prevent us going to the doctor to look after ourselves. And fasting, just drinking water or fluids, is a good way to help the healing process as well. Taking time out and without eating. So intermittent fasting is really big at the minute, but it's so good for healing as well, and I regularly do an 18-6, or so I eat till dinner time in the evening. I have a meal about 6 o'clock in the evening, and then I don't tend to eat until midday-ish the following day. So I've got an 18-hour fast so that my body I'm supporting my body to heal itself further, because it's not having to digest food. And when we're not digesting food, we're in healing mode, we're in repair.
That's very interesting. Particularly, I love the example you use about the fever, because like naturally, if I had a fever, I'm gonna be looking for the closest thing that's gonna stop it. But listening, I understand the explanation behind it and why we get a fever and the purpose of what it's supposed to do. And it's funny that the medications we take that we think are making us feel better, which might give us some respite for a little while, but it's actually counterintuitive to what like the purpose of, I guess, what the fever is, which I think is really interesting. And I think if we just look at that example and take that on expand that on a bigger level, I think that is kind of where there's maybe a disconnect in, I think, the global perception of like health and medicine and when to use it and what to use it for. Yes. And when we talk about, you mentioned that there's obviously with Eastern medicine, I've done some reading. I don't know much, but I do know that there are natural remedies. There's different types of minerals and plants and all these different things that you can just, in certain areas you can go just like pick off a tree, but that might be the thing that could like change everything for you. So I guess, do you believe, because I think there's always going to be a debate between traditional medicine and maybe a more natural approach, or more homeopathic or holistic approach. So it's interesting because you're in a unique position because you've been on both sides. So you understand, but you've gone you went through the classical route, and then you changed to the more natural side. Exactly. So I guess now, having both, you'd be the perfect person to ask this. Where do you fall? What would your answer be to that, debate? What would your perspective be? Is it a substitution kind of thing, like, oh, let's do natural rather than traditional, or is it a time and place kind of thing, and they should complement each other? I'm so curious. What are your thoughts when it comes to that?
My personal own opinion is that pharmaceuticals have a place in emergency and trauma medicine. And my father wouldn't be alive if there wasn't pharmaceuticals, because he was rushed into hospital with sepsis several years ago. So he needed fluids, he needed antibiotics, he needed pharmaceuticals. But I think, for me personally, I will always look for a natural route, because unless there's an emergency or a trauma, there's a lot that we can do. And an example at the minute, I fell over a couple of weeks ago. I was walking my dog across a field, and I slipped on some loose rocks and fell over, and I've got quite a deep gash in my leg. And it became infected 2 weeks after I'd cut my leg open. It became infected. So I started taking oil of oregano. I started treating it with silver and tea tree oil. I made some liposomal vitamin C and started taking zinc. And I'm healing the infection. I haven't taken any paracetamols, haven't taken any antibiotics. So for me, with the knowledge I've got, I will go down the natural route, and I will always self-treat unless I feel I'm at a stage where there's nothing else I can do, and I need to go in for something that's become an emergency. So I see both sides of it, and I do believe pharmaceuticals have a role to play, but I think it's a minor role. I think there's so much that we can do to help ourselves. And the people in my book have proven that, they've healed multiple sclerosis and ALS and autoimmune conditions through natural routes without pharmaceuticals. So there's so much that we can do for ourselves before we reach for that pharmaceutical.
That's very it's very interesting that that you fall more towards the natural side, I guess, for unless it is an emergency, because I think something that I guess might, I guess even from my perspective, be a what's the word, might be a hindrance for me to go down a path like that, if is once I'm sick and I'm in a situation, I'm not necessarily gonna have the clarity of mind to go and do what I need to do in a natural way. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, but from my perspective, I believe a natural remedy, while it might be better and you don't need the pharmaceutical side, I think it's time plays a big role, because this might, yes, it works, but might take longer to heal, and this one might be more, it's a pill, so it's like it's immediate. Am I completely wrong? If I am, please let me know, but from my perspective, that's how I would see it.
But that's the way of the world. That's how most people think it. Do you know what? I could just take this pill and I'm better, and it
Exactly.
sorts the thing out and it's done. And that's a conditioned mindset.
Okay.
So like my leg, I saw it becoming infected. So I started treating the infection, and the infection's now healing. It's no longer hot, it's no longer inflamed, and the discharge has reduced massively. But it's been nearly a week. But then, if I was taking antibiotics, it would still take a
A
reasonable
week.
amount of time.
Yeah.
But I would just kill all the good bacteria inside my gut and intestinal flora, which would take 2 years to repopulate. So I'd much rather go down the natural route, than they're taking the antibiotic, which is potentially a quick fix, potentially not. But then I've got to heal my gut for the next 2 years.
Wow, that's okay. I've never heard that before. It actually would take you 2 years to, no matter, does it depend on the type of antibiotic or the length of time I was on it, or any antibiotic, the recovery period from a gut, maybe health perspective, is that long?
It takes a long time because antibiotics just strip out they take all the bad stuff, but they also take the good stuff as well. So you've got to repopulate your gut with healthy, good bacteria that's been taken out by the antibiotics. So, might it be a quick fix? Maybe. But then look at the healing that I've got to do to heal. I've taken the pharmaceutical, now which has healed the disease. Now I've got to heal from taking the pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act.
No, sorry. No, for sure. That's okay. I never heard that. She's like 2 years. I'm like, what? 2 years, really?
Yeah.
That's very surprising to me. I would have never thought that. I think one thing I just thought of this is, or another reason that I guess maybe alternative or homeopathic medicine isn't maybe at the forefront or put in the same regard as pharmaceutical or traditional medicine, is I think it's a combination of, there's, I think credibility is one, the credibility of the person that I'm going to speak to heal me, because when it's traditional medicine, okay, he's got all these degrees from all these universities, he has proof that he has gone through the work to be a qualified doctor. I at least, have that. When it comes to homeopathic, again, I don't know. These are just my thoughts. Are there certificates like that? I don't. So if there are,
Yeah.
maybe credibility is an issue. Number two is, for example, yourself. you're someone who has done the work and gone through the effort to research and do. For example, we were just talking about your leg and the infection, and you're like, I was using silver and tea tree oil and this and that to heal it. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know. I would have never thought of any of these things or known how to use them in combination and amounts. So I think also learn, like, to go through the effort as a person to dive, really research to understand alternative medicine and how to use it could be a big obstacle in, I guess, more people seeking out that kind of option.
Yeah. And although I do that for myself, I don't do it for my clients. I tend to work with their belief system, their lifestyle for their own healing. I could suggest one or two things, but because I'm not trained in naturopathy, homeopathy, I don't actually recommend anything. I know what works for me. I can give them a list of different types of medications to go and research for themselves, and work with them themselves. But I don't actually prescribe treatments. I will only tend to work with their mindset, their beliefs, their lifestyles.
Gotcha. Okay, no, I think that's fair. And I think, I don't know, it's just, for me, it's a very interesting world that I don't know anything about. And I think what I've learned, whether whether my belief system follows it or not, like, I might have a certain perspective on, I guess, homeopathic medicine and stuff. That's one side of me. The other side of me is there's a lot of things that could, in this world and life, that could probably be beneficial that I don't understand. So I don't wanna, like, go against it too much. So it's kind of it's a bit of a balancing act that I think I have to do, like, mentally. And when you were talking about the power of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, now, when I went through my hypnotherapy training, I think that was the area that blew my mind the most. I guess the power of it and the impact it can have, and how thoughts influence emotions, influence action, influence thing, and it becomes like this cycle. And you have to kind of, like, figure out, all right, where is the problem, and, like, kind of point it out, and try to adjust and so on. And it's something that really, like, in my life as well, in my experience, I've made some changes that have had a huge, change on my perspective on life and how I feel and so on. But one thing that frustrates me, and I don't know why this is the way it is, if for something so important, if that is such an important thing, why are we never taught that at any stage in our education, in our careers? Because, like, I think to myself, just imagine if, like, from when I was, like, young, I was taught about, understanding my emotions, listening to them, voicing them, understanding my thought, like, having that awareness. Imagine if you had that instilled from you from such a young age. You're still going to run into problems, guys. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but I think you'd be in a much better position to go through life.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're not taught, or our generation wasn't taught to regulate our emotions as children. And I think a lot of parents, a lot of adults now are more awake around thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, that they're able to help their children to regulate their own emotions. But it's not taught in school, and it's like, so there's a lot of work to do around you understanding your thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and how it all impacts your behaviors. But we're getting there. We are getting there. And that's how I work with most of my clients around their thoughts and beliefs, because there's a lot of people are like, well, I'm sick, so I need to go to the doctor, right? Well, it depends what you're sick with. If it's nothing specific, then you could just work with it and just let your body do what it does. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of change definitely for sure needed.
No, 100%. At least one thing I'm happy about is mental health definitely is now at the forefront of the conversation globally. Maybe it's more advanced or more developed in certain places rather than others because, of culture and the cultural perspective and society. So there are still some stigmas or some challenges there. But like you said, I do think we are moving in the right direction. I hope. And
Yes.
I think I wanted to ask you about your perspective around, because I think COVID really, like, opened, that opened Pandora's box, and we really got to see. I think it woke a lot of people up to, like, oh wow, meant like internally, mentally, I'm not okay, and I think understand,
Yeah.
like, made people wake up to their mental health. So from your perspective, I guess, as a holistic healer, what was your, I guess, perspective on COVID and the reaction and how people, reacted to it? Like, from your perspective as a healer, did it change the way you thought about some things? Did it maybe even for yourself, like, make you realize, wow, there's even more that needs to be done, and more work that has to happen?
Yeah. If you think before COVID hit, if you think back, you went to the doctors and the doctor said you've got a virus. What was his normal reaction? There's
Yeah,
nothing we
not
can do. The
exactly.
virus, there's nothing we can do. Go home, rest, and hydrate. So suddenly now we're jumping into pharmaceuticals and self-isolating and being on our own by ourselves. So, A, there's the whole how do you deal with the virus, and B, there's the whole mental health aspect of it. So many people have really struggled with mental health. I mean, there was already a huge amount of people struggling with mental health in the world, and this has just exacerbated it. And we need to help these people with their mental health, because it's been compounded by what's been going on in the world. And from what I know from my own time with the depression, people with depression tend not to reach out for help. So
Sure.
we need to be reaching out to people that we know have got low mood or are depressed. We need to be helping them, because at the time that they're struggling, they're not able to help themselves. So as we reach out to help them, they will start helping themselves as they get help from us.
Yeah. So on that point, like you said, for example, in the example you used, people with depression don't seek out help, so we need to be proactive and reach out to them. Um, I wanted to ask you this question: if you see someone that's struggling with their mental health, all right, they might be oblivious to it, or they might be in denial over it, and it's someone you care about, really, so you're really trying to help them, to whatever, if it's just to talk to them, tell them maybe go to therapy, try this, try that, and you're investing a lot of emotional energy and care into trying to help someone because you see that they do need this help, but they're not doing anything to help themselves. I believe that, you know, I think there's a limit, personally. Like, there's only so much, this is my opinion. There's only so much I'm gonna try and invest, to help you. If you want my help, endless, unlimited. It's unlimited. I'm here to do whatever I can to support you. But if I'm doing everything I can to try, and at the end of the day, you're not putting in the effort, even because you might be in such a bad place, what do I do then? I think that's a question that I think about a lot, because I think it gets to a point I've learned, when it comes to emotions, if you're nonstop, if you're consistently investing emotions and not getting anything back, you're going to be emotionally drained. And I've felt that. And you literally feel like it's like you're exhausted, like in all aspects. You're just like completely tired, mentally, physically, emotionally, like all of it. So what are your thoughts when it comes to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And some people are more susceptible to that than others. Sorry. For example, empaths have a lot of emotional drain from them from into others. And yeah, my when I was feeling depressed, my friend used to take me to the gym every single week, and we'd do two classes back to back. And she did that for 2 years, until I'd started to feel a lot better in myself. But she was going to the gym anyway, so she just dropped by and picked me up. So she invested a lot of time and effort initially, to help me. And then I started to help myself. But you have to take your own abilities, emotions, and mental health into consideration as well. There is only so much you can do if somebody's not willing to help themselves. But maybe if you're struggling in helping them, maybe you could ask another friend to help, to drop by, to send them a message, to have a chat, and then maybe they could ask another friend. So it's about sharing that help around, so that that person's still receiving some help. Because quite often it could be that that person doesn't even understand what's going on, hasn't got the capacity to think about the emotional drain on their friends. And so it's about sharing the responsibility for that friend around different friends, and doing what we can when we can, because at the end of the day, we still have our own lives to lead as well.
Yeah.
And we need our energy to put into our own lives.
No,
But it is a tough question.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it I know, I don't think there's a I don't think there's a right answer. I think it just comes down to how your perspective on that kind of situation. I like what you said though, that, and that's, it's such a simple thing that I didn't think of. Like, okay, if I've run out of steam, and try to ask someone else, such a simple thing, maybe they'll have luck. Maybe all that work that you've done that they resisted, maybe if you change and someone else comes in, maybe they just have that little like key just to unlock that door, and then you're
Yeah.
off. I was thinking, Sarah, because it was interesting. I was reading about your process writing your book, and how it started just out of nothing. You wrote your own journey and so on, and then it was parked for like 5 years, and then it kept popping back up at different times, almost like it was calling you, to do this. Like this book was,
Yeah.
you had to do this book. I just wanted to understand from you, I guess, how was your experience writing the book? Because what's interesting is that you have other people's accounts who have gone through and different, illnesses, ages, varieties, so on, different healing processes, journeys, what everything that they were going through and so on. So, how did it feel, I guess, writing that book and listening and speaking to all these people, and like, because I can imagine even with all the knowledge you have, there might have been some stories that even you were like, wow, I wouldn't have, that was a surprise. I'm quite surprised that
Yeah.
that worked, or that was healed, or so on. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after I'd written my own journey, and I literally went out of my brain and onto the computer, and then it's cut and paste, copy, delete, sort, and it was never right, and every week it was changed, and then when I reached out to other people and they started sending me theirs, I'm just reading them like, wow, look at these people, they've healed this, and wow, I was just in awe. And especially things like, the cancer, the multiple sclerosis, the ALS. And I'd healed my own thyroid and adrenal glands, so I knew we could heal autoimmune. But when one of the ladies in her own journey was saying it was her third autoimmune disease she was healing, and she was healing vitiligo, where the pigment of the skin has disappeared. So you end up with the white patches in the pigment. And she said it had started to heal, and some of her white patches were disappearing, and her skin was turning back to its normal Mediterranean type color. And I'm like, wow, that's just fabulous. But absolutely, we can all heal. So why should she not be healing it? And in the main, most people had done the diet and lifestyle changes. But then other people had used energy medicine, some people had used homeopathy, some people had used naturopathy. They'd all done a little bit of something different, but all very similar. And it was just so awe-inspiring, all these beautiful people wanting to share their own healing, like myself, just to help other people to see that it's possible. And it's just so wonderful that it all came together, and that my book was born, and that people can read, and it's not just I didn't want just one person for each disease process. If I could, I wanted two or more, so that people can't just go, well, it's a fluke. They've healed multiple sclerosis, but they're only one person. And I think I've got 3 people healed multiple sclerosis, and 4 people healed cancer, and 2 people healed ALS. So it can be done, and they all share how they've done their healings to help the reader to understand how they can start their own healing journey.
Yeah.
But it just feels so fabulous.
I can imagine that must have been a very what's the word? A very like inspired,
Humbling,
humbling, yeah, humbling, and
humbling experience.
yeah,
Yeah,
and so inspiring too to be able to see, things that maybe traditional medicine would write you off on. That there are other ways to address these issues, and to not only address them to treat but to cure, which I think that's where maybe sometimes I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a homeopathic guy. I'm nothing. I'm just my perspective. I think about that might be sometimes where traditional medicine has its limits, because with certain things like autoimmunes and so on, there's only treatments, not cures. So
yeah,
at least this, with this type of with alternative medicine, or maybe a more holistic approach, maybe have a chance to cure it. You don't know, but it's nice to have that.
yeah.
It's nice to know there's a possibility, rather than that's it. This is how it is.
Yeah, one of the healers that springs to mind, I've mentioned him previously, is Kevin Smith. He had multiple sclerosis. His body had wasted. He was in a wheelchair. He needed a lot of help. And his brother had taken him to one of his doctor's appointments. And they physically watched his doctor go on Google and look for different treatments for multiple sclerosis. And then he went, wow, if he can do it, I can. So he started going away, reading round, and stopped the drug that he was on, and self healed, and now he's a bodybuilder. And
Wow,
his previous, yeah, and previously his MRI had shown big lesions of multiple sclerosis, and his latest brain scans show none. It's totally gone. It's totally healed.
that's incredible. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. See, stuff like that is those kinds. I think there needs to be those kinds of stories need to be more.
mainstream.
Yeah, thank you. More mainstream, which is why thank you for writing a book about it, so people can have access to these kind of stories. Because I think that's what's lacking. Awareness, information about the potential, and all these other areas. But congrats on the book. It's a beautiful book
Thank
to
you.
the concept of the book, and the fact that it's not just your story, it's so many others around a similar message, is a really, really
Yeah,
beautiful thing. So congrats to you on that. Sarah,
thank you.
Sarah, I just have 2 more questions for you. These are questions I ask all my guests. So looking back, I guess either professionally, personally, if I ask you the question, what are you most proud of for yourself, what would you say?
That my book is helping people to help themselves, because we can all help people, but when we're doing the helping, the people aren't really helping themselves because we're providing that help. But if we can help them to understand how they can help themselves, that is just awesome, and it's we've kind of started the what's the word, we've kindled that fire, and then they're going to keep it going.
Yeah.
So I think being a conduit to that is, I feel amazing to be able to help others to start their own healing process.
Yeah, and I can imagine it must be su- such a fulfilling feeling, knowing
Yeah,
that, someone somewhere, by reading this book, might have a chance to, heal themselves and get over what they're going through. So that's really,
yeah.
really awesome that you feel that way. And for my last question, Sarah, what is the message that you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
I'd like you to understand that your body is a natural healing machine. You were born a healer, your body naturally heals. You need to believe that you can heal. But not just that, you need to believe in your belief that you can heal, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we can all go, well, yeah, I believe I can heal, but do we really believe that belief? It's got to come from deep in that subconscious mind. So believe in your belief that you can heal because you were born to heal.
I think that's a beautiful message and a perfect way to end the show. I think I love what you said is believing in your belief that you can heal. I think that is so well said, because it's one thing to believe in that, but maybe I have some doubts. But to believe, I know it sounds funny, but I totally resonate with what you're saying. And love that message, and I totally agree. Sarah, I wanted to
Thank
say thank you so much for your time today and for coming on the show. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I really learned personally, so much from you, and thank you for, all the work you do. I think it's super helpful, and I think a lot of people hopefully will benefit from it. If people want to get in touch with you, work with you, just find out more, where let us know how can they get in touch.
So if the people go to my website, saradawkings.com, I've rebranded to Sarah Dawkins Essential Health, but it's all on my website, saradawkins.com. All my social media platforms are on there. My email's on there. You can contact me through there, and I'll get back to you.
Perfect. You heard it here, guys. If you want to get in touch with Sarah, check out her website at Sarah Dawkins Essentials, or find her on social media. Get her book. Get her book if you want to learn more about her story and what she went through, and so many others. And yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been a really great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you too, Khaled.
Appreciate it, guys. To everyone listening, thank you so much as always. Please go follow, like, share, and subscribe. Most importantly, to the podcast at hope.it.helps on all social media. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.